Dasha, first of all, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on the show today. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about something particular that I haven't got the chance to talk about when it comes to tax advantage and syndication, and how there's something out there that we can leverage to bring us even more happiness in this process. So before we get there, without unloading too much of that, Dasha, tell the listeners a little bit more about you and your background and what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm definitely excited to talk about all those tax advantages and things like that. As far as my background, I do come from a real estate family. I went on to receive my real estate development degree from USC. That's Southern California, not South Carolina. And I have been working for Lone Star. I started in college, so it's been about 3.5 years now that I've been with the company. We do multifamily acquisitions only in Texas. And I'm the director of investor relations, but my focus also expands to marketing and more kind of the transactional and legal side of the business as well. When you are a tenant in common, you're actually a tenant in common with the operator who owns the property. So you actually are owning a percentage of the actual real estate. So that is super important. If that's not the case, then it's not going to be a valid 1031 exchange. The kind of complications that come with doing a 1031 exchange into a syndication is that it can't be a partnership. So it's a little bit of a gray area, and you have to be very careful in structuring these 1031 exchanges, because if it is seen by the IRS as a partnership and not actually a tenancy in common, your exchange could be invalid. So it's super important to actually consult a tax attorney and work with a group that is experienced in accepting 1031 exchanges into their syndications and that you feel comfortable with, because there is some gray area with the partnership side of things. So that's kind of a high-level overview and the complexities, and I think part of the reason why a lot of people don't know to do it is because of those complexities. And a lot of sponsorship groups, operators don't accept 1031 exchanges because it is a bit more complicated to do. But early on in our growth, we decided that was something that we wanted to do and be able to offer to our investors. So we feel super comfortable and have been doing a ton of them over the years.
So what does DST stand for? TIC, you call the TIC, tenant in common. What does DST stand for?
A Delaware Statutory Trust. And it's a interesting name because it doesn't mean that of course, the real estate has to be in Delaware or anything like that.
Delaware Statutory Trust. And we're talking about the syndication, right? What you're moving it into. It has to be in the TIC structure versus the DST structure. So is that correct?
That would be just for us. So you can still, as a 1031 exchange investor, a DST is definitely a valid way to do a 1031 exchange into a syndication. It's actually, overall, I would say more popular. It's more common for the DST minimum to be a lot smaller because you're not actually, a tenant in common. Actually, you're investing into a trust. So the minimums are usually, I would say, about 100,000 versus with a TIC, can definitely vary by the group, but I would say it's closer to $1 million.
So the minimum investment is $1 million on the TIC.
I would say that's the average for sponsorship groups accepting 1031 exchanges. For us, it's usually about $750,000.
I understand you're not an attorney, I'm not an attorney, but what about liability issues then? Because I feel like that would put me more at risk because my name's on title as opposed to being somewhere down the line in these syndications.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually it's not the actual individual that is going to be the direct owner of title in the property. So we create a new fresh entity. We form a new entity for our TIC investors, and so we are non-member managers of those entities. So of course, we have an operating agreement between our investor and the operating agreement for that entity that we create that will actually be the direct owner. And so that basically allows us to be the managers of those entities, and that really reduces the liability of our investors as individuals. And so we're actually the ones who sign on the loan, but technically those entities are still borrowers on the loan.
So I have no money that I have to spend, but I have to, and that would depict the value or the amount. I'd have to at least need to be 300. So I'd have to put in 300 of my own money in order to make that exchange work.
So the way that it works, so I'm assuming what you're saying is that you have no actual money in that property is because it's all debt?
Yes.
So when you do a 1031 exchange, not only does the equity portion need to be exchanged, but also the debt. So that also, let's go back to the other example let's just say you have $750,000, you just sold a property, it's free and clear, there's no debt on the property. You go and exchange that with us, you're still allocated debt proportionally to your ownership percentage of the property. So, I mean, we're leveraging on this property, we're using debt where we have a mortgage on the property. And so since you're a borrower, since you would be a borrower, you would be allocated the proportional amount of debt to your ownership percentage. So then this could be, I guess, a negative to doing a 1031 exchange into a syndication if you do own your property free and clear and you'd like to do that going forward. Because then if you invest $750,000 into our syndication, then you get allocated debt, and then on the back end, if you want to exchange again, you'll have to replace that debt as well.
How many 1031 exchange partners is Lone Star Capital interested in doing? Because this could get extremely laborious with the paperwork.
Yeah, well, luckily I love 1031 exchanges, and I'm usually the one who's doing most of the work, so we're happy to have as many as we can get. But I would say it really depends. We had a deal last summer, which is when I really became super interested in TICs. We filled up the entire equity stack with 5 different TICs. So
Oh, wow.
that was pretty cool. It was a smaller deal for us, but still we were able to fill up all the equity with that. So that was, very simple. You only have 5 investors to talk to and work with on a deal. So it was pretty cool. But then we also, because of the requirement of a 1031 exchange for them to own direct title to the property, we do kind of our bread and butter is a tax exemption deal. Unfortunately, those deals are not eligible for 1031 exchanges. So most of the deals that we've been doing in the past year have been tax exemption deals, which we are not able to take 1031 exchanges. So it really depends. But I would say the deals that are eligible, we have more of them because we have a decent amount of demand for 1031 exchanges.
So modest rent restriction, what does that mean?
It depends on the deal, and it also depends on the market rent or where the current rents are at the properties. But usually the rent restriction is, or not usually, it's always based on the area median income, and that is also reassessed every year. So it really is, I think it's a great program partially because of that, because there isn't just like a rigid, you can only increase rents 2% per year, or you're maxing out. It's really just dependent on how that area is doing with their median incomes. So usually it's split up where we have to allocate a certain amount of the units to 60% of the area median income, or 80%, or it's a combination. So it kind of changes deal by deal, the agreement as well.
And then the tax exempt piece Is there a time limit on that, and what taxes are exempt? Is it the real estate taxes?
Yes, it's property taxes, which is, a huge expense in Texas. So it's great to have that benefit. The program goes on for 99 years. However, we don't have to stay in the program